A fiery redhead with a rebellious nature. Sure sounds like a deadly combo, no? Well, that was Anne Bonny, an Irish pirate who operated on the Caribbean Sea in the 1700s. Along with her reported temper, she would prove to be a versatile fighter on the decks and would earn her place as a renowned pirate, despite living in a time where women were not considered as equals. Bonny was likely born in the early 1700s and was a daughter to a prestigious lawyer named William Cormac. However, her mother was a mere servant, and Bonny would be born outside of wedlock. In fact, her father William was already married to another woman at the time, but she would divorce him upon learning about his affair. Disgraced by this affair, Cormac would leave his home with Bonny and her mother and move to the province of Carolina. As I mentioned earlier, Anne Bonny was said to have a fiery temper. It's been said that at the mere age of 13, she stabbed a servant for reasons unknown, and even hospitalized a young man for weeks who had tried to rape her. There's also a story that the rebellious teen even set her father's plantation on fire. Her father would arrange a marriage for her with a local man, but Anne would resist and run away with a sailor known as James Bonny, whose name she took after marrying him. Anne and James would set sail to the island of New Providence in the Bahamas, which was something of a safe haven for pirates. Once there, James would take a job as an informant for the Governor Woodes Rogers. Essentially, James became something of a snitch, ratting out the other pirates to the governor for money. Anne despised this line of work as she had formed friendships and bonds with the pirates who she was said to have drunk with in taverns. It caused her to develop a wandering eye as she became disinterested in her husband and a lot more interested in a man who would be known as Calico Jack. Calico Jack, otherwise known as John Rackman, was a pirate captain of a sloop known as Revenge. It wasn't long before Bonny began an affair with Calico Jack, and the two were in love. Calico Jack was said to have offered James Bonny a lucrative amount of money to divorce Anne so that he might marry her himself. But James declined. It would be a mistake that would have him no doubt kicking himself, because Anne and Calico Jack did a runner all the same. It's around this time that Bonny would meet Mary Read, another woman in Jack's crew who she would befriend. Some accounts even state that Bonny and Read were sexually active with each other and would engage in threesomes with Jack, though these cannot be confirmed, but I like to think that they were true. Bonny would disguise herself as a man on board the ship, but it wouldn't be long before the crew realised that this was a ruse as she fell pregnant with Calico Jack's child. After learning this, Calico Jack landed on the island of Cuba, where Bonny was able to give birth. It's said that the baby was given to extended family of Jack's, but other reports indicate that the child was simply abandoned. Both Bonny and Calico Jack returned to the seas where she would eventually marry him. With Mary Read, Bonny and Calico Jack would steal a vessel known as the William and would establish a brand new crew. They would travel to Jamaica and spend the next few years preying on small, low-risk vessels in the surrounding areas. As I mentioned earlier, Bonny would join the men on the deck in the fighting and was said to be able to hold her own. She was proficient in hand-to-hand combat, demonstrating a ruthlessness that saw her overcome her enemies. In fact, she was so formidable that Woodes Rogers would mention her by name in a newspaper article that listed wanted pirates. In October 1720, Anne Bonny's luck would run out, and both herself and Calico Jack's crew would be apprehended by a king's ship captained by Jonathan Barnett, who was under orders from the governor of Jamaica, Nicholas Laws. It was noted that most of Calico Jack's crew were drunk when they were apprehended, and so were quickly dealt with. Jack, Bonny and Read would fight against Laws's men for a short time, and while they put up quite the fight, they were soon subdued. Calico Jack's entire crew was sentenced to be hanged. Bonny was allowed one last visit to Calico Jack in his cell, where she was said to have not professed her undying love for him, but something quite the opposite. "Had you fought like a man," she reportedly said, "you need not have been hung like a dog." Talk about a bad breakup. After being sentenced, Anne Bonny and Mary Read would claim that they were pregnant and beg for mercy for the sake of their children. The women's execution was delayed until they were able to give birth, but Reed would die in prison after contracting a fever during her labour. Anne would stay in prison, and unfortunately, not much beyond that is known. It's speculated that her father ransomed her out of prison and that she was returned to her husband James Bonny. Other reports state that she was married off to a new man at her father's choosing, where she bore children and lived life as a regular housewife. Some rumours state that Bonny went back to a life of pirating and continued to sail the seas plundering ships. What do you guys think happened to Anne Bonny? It's hard to imagine her accepting a mundane life after her excursions, but perhaps her run-in with the law had scared her straight. Let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Our next pirate happens to be linked with my favourite rum,